everyone. I'm Charna Davis-Wiese, and welcome to UCF Expressions. It's a college course like no other, experiencing the culture and the art of centuries away, thousands of miles away. Joining us today is our first guest, Tomas Valladares, who is actually a marketing major at the University of Central Florida and is involved in this incredible program of learning about the folk art of China, and is now also a filmmaker. Yes. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about the journey you took, because not all of our journeys are a straight route. But you're part of a group called China Vine, yes. And we've met before, and you are helping to bring the culture of China and folk art to us, and vice versa. Yeah. And when I last met you, you helped plan the trip and plan the film, but you didn't get to go. Yeah. This time you got to go.
I did get to go.
I bet that was better, huh?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I've been working as production manager for China Vine for quite some time now, and so I've been sort of behind the scenes, and now I've actually gotten the chance to go. So in March, we went with a group of 6 student filmmakers from UCF, and we went for 2 weeks, and we traveled almost all over China, and we got to experience a really great, different view of China than most people get to see, than most tourists get to see.
Now this is in conjunction with the university there as well.
Yes, it's a partnership between the Shandong University of Art and Design, University of Oregon, and UCF. And in Shandong, they have a folk art research institute. So they've done a lot of the background research, and we've got this partnership together to put their research on the internet for English-speaking audiences. So it's a chance to sort of recreate the environments of these artists and really to learn about the traditional folk art in rural China.
Now we have a little video, an introduction.
Yeah.
Does the introduction need an introduction before we take a look at it?
No, it's really just introducing kind of what our project is and the trip that we got to take.
Okay, let's take a look.
By car, moped, bicycle, and foot, many Chinese villagers would travel this way. So, I decided to try it out. This was my most memorable experience in China. The villagers were extremely friendly, and when asked, one of them had no problem letting me on for a ride. While in China, I was shocked at how comfortable and safe I felt there. Hi, I'm Erica, and I was sent to China with a group of UCF students to film Chinese folk artists through a cultural heritage project called China Vine. But getting to these artists wasn't easy. Most of what I remember from the trip was the constant traveling. It took an entire day just to get to China.
Ian, Erica, I'm Mike too. Welcome to
Hi. Once we met with the SUAD students, we were traveling from village to village. Hours and hours were spent riding on a bus. Occasionally, we'd make stops to buy food, and it was always exciting to try it. Tomas here is surprised with his shrimp candies. The SUID team took complete care of us, though, and helped us every step of the way onto a train to our next journey without them, the Three Gorges.
Yeah, you can come to China the 4 times. Yeah, I want to.
Thank you so much. Oh, Terry. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Good.
The train ride was 17 hours, and people would pass by and look at us. I'll never forget Sarah, being the white blonde that she is, sitting on the train as passengers on the parallel train would stare at her, surprised to see her. Many people in China had never seen a white person, and so we felt like celebrities at times with all the attention, but soon began to ignore it. Next, we met Alice, our tour guide and translator. Silly from all the constant traveling, we danced in the van and made the best of it. Finally, we boat we stayed on for 3 days touring the gorges. It was a Chinese tour boat, and so we continued to receive the regular attention from the passengers, but it sure made the trip unique. The 3 gorges along the Yangtze River were beautiful. A few times a day the boat would stop and let us walk around for a while. We were lucky to see them because the gorges are going to be flooded in 2011 up to the 175 mark, so many of the people's houses will be underwater. We were also able to see the dam that is currently being built, and when finished, it will be the largest hydroelectric power station in the world. I'll never forget all those beautiful sights as part of my experience in China, especially the friendliness of the people and my motorcycle ride.
How'd it go?
Good.
That's awesome.
You know, when you work in this field, you can work there on site and you can work like you were as the project manager. And I know that when you look at, people don't understand how much video or film you go through to end up with a 2-minute piece. And you probably felt like you were there the first time, but I'm sure it was different this time.
Oh yeah, there's nothing that can compare. When, you know, looking at the footage when I hadn't gone, you know, I still felt some connection to these artists, but it's not the same. It's definitely not the same. We went and we had 3 HD cameras, so we have a ton of footage, really great footage. And so we sort of broke ourselves up into teams where we had two filmmakers inside with the artists, following the process and learning about the process with the artist. And then myself and another student, we were out in the villages, and our job was to document the village life around where these artists live, and that was really incredible. We have a lot of footage, and we have a lot of work to do now to
edit it down,
yeah.
Because you probably are in love with all of it. It's hard to cut out part of it. Now, living with them and seeing what their life is like is such a big part of their folk art, because their folk art is really different to each village, different to each province most likely, and really from the heart.
Oh yeah, these are really traditional folk arts that have been passed down for generations many times. We visited one artist who he brought out these scrolls. He does puhui painting, which is a specific technique that they do, and he brought out paintings they're 300 years old, and they're from his family, from generations past. And that's just how they do it, is they pass down these traditions and these art forms by generation. And it's really, each village they sort of specialize in a different art form and a different technique. So it's really, the whole village is really tied to these traditions.
Tell me about the guy you met on the street making tombstones.
Oh, that was a great story. So we were walking through the village and we were taking pictures, and we come across a man who was carving tombstones. And he was doing this beautiful calligraphy in the tombstone. So we were taking some pictures, and you know, he sees us and he kind of got surprised, and then in his rough English, hello, hello, you know, he invited us into his home. And so it was myself and a friend of mine, Ian, who was with us. And we got invited to his home, so we went inside, and he was showing us around, and he was showing us these beautiful pieces of calligraphy that he made, and he carves gourds as well. And the calligraphy was beautiful, and I tried to sort of sign language my way and ask him if I could buy it, you know, because I thought it was just great. And he was like, oh, no, no, no. And he just handed it to me, and then handed Ian one, and he also handed us a gourd. And so, you know, we were just thrown aback by this, and it was just so great. And then he looks at us in sort of, you know, his broken English, and this is from the heart. This is a gift from the heart. What do you have for me?
Where's your gift from the heart?
So we were looking at each other, and all we had was our cameras, and
You can't give those.
No.
The whole project.
So I had my sunglasses on, and he was like, "Hey, how much are your sunglasses?" And I said, "Oh, you know, I bought them at Walgreens." He said, "Give them to him." So I gave them to him, and he loved them. He put them on, and he was walking around the whole village showing everyone his sunglasses, and it was really a good moment, and you know, I think he looks better in them anyway.
Thank goodness you had them with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that really taught you a lot about their culture and their way of life.
Yeah, you know, it's very, gifts are very important to their culture, and it was just really incredible. One of the most incredible things about it was the people there, and the people in the villages were so generous and so warm, and they were really curious to know what you were doing there. Another time I was walking through, and this little girl, which was another great aspect of walking through the villages, was the children. Everywhere we go, we have a parade of children following us. And so it was just so much fun, and they're so lively, and they're looking to see what you're taking a picture of, and really curious. And so I was walking through, and a little girl who spoke actually decent English, you know, she said hello, she introduced herself, and she invited me into her home as well. And so I got to go into her home, and I met her whole family there, and they gave me tea. And, you know, of course you can't really communicate, but it's just about the connection with the people, which is really, really great.
You had a similar experience that I did when I was in El Salvador as a reporter covering an earthquake in the middle of a war there. And we went to an area where the people were so incredibly poor, and they were living in basically cardboard boxes. There were no men in the village. They were all out working someplace for $1 a month or something like that. And when we drove up, it was the same kind of thing where the kids came running towards us. I still have the pictures. Yeah. And I had the picture on my desk for like 10 years because kids are kids, yeah, whether they're living in a cardboard box or here in Orlando.
It's very true.
And you felt that too. You went to the village and there was nobody between certain ages?
Yeah. I would say between the ages of 18 and 35. There was no one in those ages, and that's mainly because they're in the cities looking for work. There's a lot of construction, so they will go and work on a construction project for 6-9 months, come back for a little while, and then go back. So what you're left with is in these villages is just the older people, the grandparents taking care of their grandchildren. And so there was a lot of older people and a lot of kids.
You took a trip to the Three Gorges?
Yes. That was the second half of our trip. So the first half of our trip was with the team from the university over there, and we got to see the artists and really get into that environment. And then the second part of our trip was on our own, and we got to take a river cruise through the Three Gorges, and that was incredible to see. We got to see the dam, which is immense. It's a huge project. And what was really striking to see there was they're going to be flooding the river once they finish the dam, the water level is going to rise. And what was really incredible to see there was that they have markers along the river showing the levels of where the water is going to rise. And I have this great picture of, it's a small sort of island that's been created now because the water level has been rising. And it's this beautiful farm with these beautiful colors, and they grow canola, and you see the small farmhouse, and then on the top of this hill is a marker that says 175 meters. And the water level is predicted to rise at least to that mark, or if not higher. So that whole farm and all these people's way of life is going to be drowned.
Where are they going to go? Did they tell you?
A lot of times what they've been doing is just destroying whole cities and then rebuilding them higher up on the mountain. So there was one place that we stopped on the cruise where we docked was already 150 meters above. There was 150 meters of water from where it used to be, and the original city was under 70 meters of water already underneath where our boat was.
But it's more complicated than just moving. That family may have been there for generations in that particular farm.
Of course, and there's temples. There's temples that are just going to be washed away, and it's really incredible to see, and we're so lucky to be able to see that before it's gone.
And take the pictures.
Take the pictures.
And thanks
and
for sharing those
document
pictures with us. So you're going to get to go again, but first you have a jillion hours of film to edit.
We have a good amount of work to do this summer, and probably come the fall is editing all this information, doing some more of the research, putting it up on the website. Hopefully we will have a chance to go again. You know, that's always in the works. Right now, we're sort of finishing up our work with the Shandong University, and we're working on getting new partnerships in other parts of the country. There's artists in Beijing that we've have contact with, and then also there is possibility of maybe moving up to Mongolia and doing a province up there, which there's a lot of minority groups as well in China, so that's another aspect that we'd like to you know, document, not just the traditional Chinese folk arts, but also these minority traditions that are now moving into the country and that are evolving, because there's a lot of Muslim populations as well that are moving into the country, and so these traditions are changing and combining with Chinese traditions. So those are really something interesting that we're kind of looking into, perhaps moving into.
I bet you never thought you'd have this as part of an interest and be so involved in it.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, never would I have thought that I would be able to get to work on such an amazing project that I feel is really important, because these traditions are really at risk of being lost, and it's just so great to be able to have the experience to go there, to see these artists, to meet them, to sit and eat with them. You know, it's just, you really are connected with a living link to these traditions, these really ancient traditions that have such a deep meaning to the people over there. It's really great.
Thank you. For those of us who get to experience through your eyes, we're going to have to say see you later, Mike, because Mike is coming on, one of your team members,
yes.
Tomas Valladares. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, you're going to meet one of the other members of this particular China Vine team. Don't go away. We're back. Welcome back to UCF Expressions, and we're talking about the China Vine program, which is an amazing program through the University of Central Florida and the University of Shandong University
of Art and Design
in China, in the Shandong Province. And meet Mike Diaz, who is a member of the team. Now, we just met Tomas, who is a marketing major who found his way to film again. And are you a film major?
I am a graduate film major. My background's in history, but I kind of fell into film in a similar way, I guess, to Tomas. And I'm in the MFA program, where my goal is to make a feature-length film of some sort.
So how did you come across China Vine?
I actually met Sarah Long, who's one of the oldest founding members of China Vine, on a film set last summer. And I told her that I like to travel, and she said she was getting to go overseas with this project, and you know, work on folk art and do documentaries, and potentially stay there for a semester or a year. And kind of the dollar signs just went up in my eyes, and I said, well, how much
does
tell me
this
more.
cost?
And she said they were looking to send a graduate student with her, and so the rest is history. I jumped on board.
So you had really no background in Chinese folk art like Tomas. This was all new for you?
It was all new. As an undergrad, I took a couple of semesters of Asian history, East Asian history, and so I knew a bit about China's ancient history. I didn't know much about the modern state of the nation. So I was really fresh, completely fresh, and then I signed on to the project without knowing its history or too much about it, and then went overseas to work for them. So
and it turned out to be probably life-changing?
Life-changing, existential, brilliant, anything you want to say. It was
any,
all of the above.
Any superlative you can pick.
Yes.
So you get to China, and you actually lived there a full semester.
Yeah.
So where did you live?
We lived in the foreign student dormitory in Jinan. The actual university, the functional university is out of the city in what they call College Town, which has 100,000 students in this tiny little valley, which is about an hour away. So we were right in the middle of this 6 million person metropolis, dropped off at this dormitory. There are 2 other Westerners, all the rest are Chinese.
Nobody speaks Chinese.
Nobody speaks Chinese. I don't speak a word of Chinese. The girls that are...
Tomas knows how to say thank you, so he's...
Well, after a certain amount of time, you know, your brain kind of goes numb and you start to, you know, learn everything from scratch again. So that's what happened to me. But initially, didn't know a thing.
Usually with something like this, you kind of feel like you're going to ease into things, but you never do. It's kind of like you hit the ground running.
Yeah, exactly. And so the guy that picked us up from the airport, a fellow named Lee, who's another grad student interested in film, doesn't speak a word of English. So we would just communicate through hand signals and actually kind of got to know each other through the trip, which was pretty spectacular, you know, without using verbal language. So you learn to get by, and then you kind of, the language sort of creeps its way into your brain, and you know a little bit more than you thought you did, and you get used to the cadence of life, and
which is different.
Very different.
Way different.
Very different.
More than I don't think we can even imagine.
Yeah, it's a completely different world. It was like landing on a totally different planet.
So what was your actual job there? My
job, well, we were supposed to help the SUAD team, the folk art team over there, move from the old museum to this expansive new one on the new campus. We were supposed to go on folk art expeditionary work, do field work again. But unfortunately, when we arrived, they were going through evaluations, sort of like our accreditation process. So the president of the university was using all of his resources at the same time to get everything prepared for the Beijing officials. So we didn't get to work with them as directly as we'd hoped, so we actually had a lot of free time to basically wander China with the camera and film and document our experiences through narrative and through stories and blogging. And I actually did a lot of written research on folk art, and so I feel like it was fruitful nonetheless.
Now, Tomas had his story about meeting the tombstone maker, the calligrapher, and exchanging sunglasses. Do you have any situation like that?
Well, I was there for about 6 weeks. I was actually teaching English. The university allowed me to go to the campus and teach juniors conversational English. And surprisingly enough,
I'm trying to figure out how you could do that if you don't know Chinese.
Well, they're all native English people. They're wild about the Anglophone world over there.
So they know
they
it.
take teachers all the time, and yeah, and most of these kids have been studying for 6 and 7 years English. But it's one thing to study the written language; it's another thing to study the oral language. And so I really felt kind of isolated after 6 weeks. It was just Sarah and I communicating, and you know, even the girls that were working as translators kind of stumbled through spoken English. And then one day, this kid pops up out of the crowd. Literally out of a crowd of students, and he says, "Hi, my name's Leon. Where are you from?" And I said, "Florida." Perfect inflection. Sounded like he had been speaking English for 10 years. And apparently he just was an Anglophile, wanted to travel the world, and became really a great friend. He got his English skills by watching American movies, downloading them off iTunes. And so the kid's brilliant and ended up becoming a great friend. So
isn't that funny?
Yeah.
So which of the artwork, is there any of the artwork that you particularly are drawn to? I
think that I'm really fascinated by the dough art, which is dough cakes. Kind of, I think that the practice originated in northern China along the Yellow River Valley. And originally, I like the fact that it sort of still follows its function, that originally it was just basically a celebratory tool, and they would make massive cakes, festival cakes that everybody would eat. And when we went back in March and actually got to go on some of these fieldwork trips, I was fascinated by the intricacy of these cakes. I never thought that a cake could be so fantastic, and they just spend literally hours painting hundreds of tiny individual figures that they stick on the back of some cake, and they manage to cram all of their history and all of their culture into these really beautiful pieces of art. And so when I was there over the fall, I used to go through the museum as they were cataloging it, and I hadn't learned too much about the dough cakes, but saw a couple of fantastic specimens they had sitting out, and just wanted to know more about it. So I really feel fortunate to have gotten to go in March.
Are there in some villages only a few people who actually still do it?
Yeah, well, the art still exists. It's kind of become commodified.
Right.
Sarah and I found all kinds of folk art shops everywhere where they were selling it. But I get the feeling that it's sort of moving towards mass production. So the art is not extinct. And dough art is kind of the leader in becoming a commodity amongst the folk arts.
So that's where the tourists come and want to buy.
Yeah, because it's figurines and they're cute. But it is rapidly disappearing in its original form.
As a part of their culture.
With the original sort of intangible cultural spirit. As you're getting this population vacuum from the villages, as the new generations are moving out to the cities to get jobs and become engineers and travel and do all sorts of things that are very modern, the art is going to change with it. I don't think it'll go extinct, but I think it's going to change.
Now, when you signed on to this and you went over there, it was pretty much as a clean slate. You really didn't know what to expect, but then a semester's a long time.
Yeah, it ended up being, it went by like that, but in the end, it felt, I came home and people would say, how was China? And I would just say, good.
You can't really.
With a flood of memories.
You couldn't really sit down and describe it in one sentence.
There's no way to synthesize it in a few words.
I know that in situations I've been in, I used to do outward bound trips, and the last night, I remember being around the campfire and somebody saying to the river leader, do we have to go back? Why do we have to go back? And he said, that's where your people are. And I was like, oh yeah.
I know
but
that
it's
feeling.
the last day. It's something that becomes such a party for you, I can imagine, because you were there for a long time.
Quite a while. The last day that we were there, Sarah was packing up the dorms, and I went off to get train tickets to go to Beijing. And driving back, I realized that I was having this conversation with the taxi driver in Chinese without thinking twice, and realized, oh my God, I've actually learned more than I thought. And when we got to the airport in Beijing, there was sort of this strange mix of nostalgia and panic over going home. When I got to San Francisco, I felt very much out of my element. It felt very strange being in the US. And it was funny because I went to pick up the bags, I'm standing at baggage claim, and I found myself gravitating towards the few Chinese that were on the flight and standing next to them and kind of nodding and feeling, whoa, wait a minute, my people are over there.
Somebody say, you're American. Wonderful project, China Vine, from all different areas of the university. How do we get on it?
It's www.chinavine.org.
There you go, www.chinavine.org. Mike Diaz, and again, thank you to Tomas Valladares. And when it's all done and edited, you come back?
Of course.
Great.
Of course.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next time on UCF Expressions.